Have you ever noticed how one single relationship can drain the light out of you without ever raising its voice? Sometimes it's a quiet erosion, the slow loss of peace, confidence, and the sense that your life belongs to you. The Stoics saw this clearly. Some people pull us away from our nature rather than back toward it. So today, we look at the signs that reveal when distance becomes an act of self-respect. If what you hear resonates, stay with me, and let's walk through this with clarity and courage. As we step into the first chapter, imagine this scene with quiet honesty. You're sitting across from someone you've known for years, perhaps a friend, perhaps a relative. The conversation flows easily until a familiar line slips out again, soft, almost casual. "I don't have money." You've heard it before, but each time it lands a little heavier. You nod politely, you understand, yet something inside you begins to ache. Because deep down you know this isn't about money at all. It's about value, about what you mean to them when there's no benefit attached. I once had a friend like that. On the surface, he was kind, even charming, always ready to talk about dreams and plans. But when it came to following through, there was always a reason, always a delay. He never failed to show up for expensive dinners with others or spontaneous weekend trips that flattered his image. Yet with me, he was suddenly too careful, too restricted, too broke. At first, I made excuses for him, telling myself he might be struggling or embarrassed to admit it. But over time, I realized the pattern wasn't random. It was selective. He was generous when it suited him, cautious when it didn't. That's when I understood. His scarcity wasn't financial, it was emotional. The Stoics often reminded us to observe what people run toward and what they avoid. Marcus Aurelius saw in human behavior the reflection of their true values. Some run toward pleasure, others toward virtue. When someone constantly avoids giving, contributing, or sharing, while freely indulging elsewhere, they are showing you not who they are in words, but who they are in essence. It is never about the amount of money they have. It's about the weight they assign to your presence. Think about how many times you've been that person who covers the bill, initiates plans, gives more of yourself, and receives little in return. You tell yourself that generosity is noble, and it is, but generosity without balance becomes self-neglect. The Stoics warned of this subtle erosion of dignity. Seneca wrote that a man who receives favors without gratitude robs the giver. And that's exactly what these relationships do. They rob you quietly, not of wealth, but of peace, of fairness, of self-respect. Every relationship is a silent exchange of energy. When one side constantly takes while the other gives, harmony is lost. It may not shatter instantly. Instead, it fades slowly, like a candle dying from lack of air. You start feeling drained after every meeting. You start sensing that your kindness is being catalogued, not appreciated. You begin to feel invisible in the very space where you once felt connected. This is how imbalance reveals itself, not through arguments, but through fatigue. The truth is, people who use selective generosity often believe you won't notice. They count on your empathy, your patience, your reluctance to confront. But the Stoic sees clearly. A Stoic learns to recognize patterns instead of apologies, consistency instead of promises. The person who repeatedly pleads scarcity when it's time to show up, yet displays abundance when it benefits them, has already told you what place you hold in their hierarchy of importance. Believe them. One day, I decided to stop chasing that balance. I stopped offering explanations or discounts on my worth. I stepped back quietly, without drama, without anger, and something remarkable happened. I felt lighter. There's a strange liberation in not trying to convince someone of your value anymore. The silence that followed wasn't loneliness, it was peace. Because peace often enters the same moment you stop negotiating for it. Marcus Aurelius once reflected, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." In this context, it means to remain generous, but not naive, to stay kind, but not permissive. Do not let the insincerity of others harden your heart, but let it refine your discernment. Generosity should flow where it can nourish, not where it will be wasted. You do not owe endless chances to those who treat your giving as their entitlement. So if you notice someone repeatedly excusing themselves from effort or contribution, take it as a sign, not of their struggle, but of your need to set boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are lines of clarity. They don't separate you from compassion, they protect it from depletion. Walk away from those who measure their generosity selectively, for they do not seek connection, they seek convenience. Good relationships don't calculate, they don't keep score, they don't make you feel guilty for expecting reciprocity. A healthy bond feels balanced, light, and mutual. You give because you want to, and the other person meets you halfway because they value your presence, not because they need your help. That balance is sacred. Protect it fiercely. In the end, remember this. People reveal their priorities not in what they say, but in what they repeatedly choose. If someone consistently chooses their comfort over your companionship, believe them. Don't argue, don't explain. Simply withdraw your energy with calmness and grace. The Stoics never taught detachment out of bitterness. They taught it as the art of preserving inner equilibrium. Your peace is not negotiable. Your worth is not up for debate. And your kindness should never become a currency others spend freely while offering nothing in return. Sometimes the most powerful way to honor a relationship is to end it quietly, without resentment, without spectacle, only with understanding. Because not every person who shares your past deserves to share your future. So, as you move forward, pay attention to the small things. Who reaches out? Who contributes? Who remembers your efforts, even when they gain nothing from you? These details, invisible to most, are the compass of genuine connection. And when you find yourself hesitating to walk away from those who drain you, recall this truth. Choosing distance isn't selfish. It's wisdom. It's the space where self-respect breathes again. Moving into the next chapter, imagine being caught in a conversation that begins gently but somehow always ends in noise. What started as a simple exchange becomes a battlefield of opinions, and suddenly you are no longer talking, you are defending. The air thickens, voices rise, and you find yourself wondering how something so small turned into another exhausting quarrel. This is what happens when you are around those who feed on conflict. They turn every disagreement into a test of loyalty, every difference into a demand for sides. The Stoics understood this well, for they saw anger not as power, but as weakness disguised as passion. I once had a friend who seemed confident, articulate, and persuasive, but beneath that confidence lived a hunger to be right. He could turn any topic, books, travel, even the weather, into an argument that left everyone around him drained. At first, I mistook his sharpness for intelligence, thinking that maybe his assertiveness came from insight. It didn't. It came from insecurity. Every time someone disagreed, he felt threatened, as if the loss of an argument was a loss of identity. The Stoics would have called this enslavement to emotion. Seneca once wrote, "He who is angry at the right things and with the right people is praiseworthy, but he who is angry at everything is sick in soul." My friend wasn't sick in body, but his spirit lived on a battlefield that never rested. There was a moment that defined the friendship's fate. We were with a small group, planning a trip together. It was light-hearted, full of jokes and ideas, until he disagreed with someone about a trivial detail, the route we would take. Within minutes, voices were raised, laughter died, and he turned to me expecting me to take his side. In that instant, I saw the truth. It wasn't about the route, the trip, or the plan. It was about control. He didn't want discussion, he wanted allegiance. And in his demand for validation, I felt something within me close. I realized that if I joined his quarrel, I'd lose a part of my peace that would take days to recover. Epictetus taught, when someone is stirred by anger, know that what disturbs him is not the action itself, but his own judgment about it. People who thrive on arguments live in constant misjudgment. They think that the louder they are, the more they exist. But volume never equals truth. It only reveals unrest. A calm man can walk through disagreement, like through fog, aware of it, but never blind because of it. The one who argues, on the other hand, tries to clear the fog by shouting at it. Over time, I learned that arguing with such people changes nothing. You cannot reason with someone who confuses noise for strength. You cannot build peace with someone who fears silence. So, I began to practice restraint. I started to walk away when conversations turned toxic, not as an act of defeat, but as an act of mastery. For Stoicism is not about winning debates, it is about winning yourself back from the chaos of others. And when you begin to value peace more than victory, you stop being bait for anyone's storm. But walking away is not always easy. The world often mistakes calmness for weakness. People say, "You should have said something," as if silence means surrender. Yet silence, when chosen consciously, is the highest form of control. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water." To be that cliff is not to be cold, it is to be steady. Let others crash if they must. You remain whole. In our daily lives, there are countless small battles waiting for us. At work, within families, even among friends. Some are born from misunderstanding, others from ego. The Stoic path is not to fight every war, but to discern which ones are worth fighting at all. When a person constantly drags you into conflict, you have to ask, what are they really seeking? More often than not, they seek validation, not truth. And by refusing to play their game, you take away their only weapon, the reaction they crave. The more I distanced myself from my argumentative friend, the more I realized how peaceful silence can feel. There was no tension to anticipate, no words to defend, no side to take, just quiet space, room for thought, for understanding, for life. That peace became addictive, and once you taste it, you'll no longer trade it for the chaos of another person's insecurities. Life isn't measured by how many battles you win, but by how often you stay composed when provoked. A single moment of calm can save days of regret. Each time you resist the pull of an argument, you reclaim your energy. You rise above the need to prove, to explain, to convince. You discover what the Stoics meant when they said that tranquility is not found by controlling others, but by mastering yourself. So, when you meet those who constantly quarrel, who twist every conversation into a test, remember this simple truth. Their noise is not your responsibility. Let them wrestle with their own restlessness. You owe no defense to those who mistake aggression for confidence. Preserve your calm, not because they deserve it, but because your peace does. Walk away before your spirit is pulled into their storm. Not with anger, not with contempt, just with the quiet strength of someone who finally understands that silence is not an absence of words, but the presence of wisdom. Now imagine this. After a long day, you open your heart to someone you trust. You share what's been weighing on your mind, a worry that's quietly grown heavy inside you. You expect understanding, perhaps a little comfort. But instead of listening, they turn the moment toward themselves. They say, "That's nothing. You should hear what I'm going through." And just like that, your vulnerability disappears beneath their shadow. The Stoics would tell you that such people are not companions. They are mirrors that only reflect themselves. There's a subtle pain that comes when someone treats your struggles as trivial. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, like a door slowly closing between hearts. I once experienced this with a longtime friend. I had been balancing work with caring for my aging parents, a time when exhaustion lived in my bones. When I opened up to him, hoping for empathy, he brushed it aside. "Yeah, I get it," he said. "But you know what's really stressful? My boss." In a moment, the air shifted. My pain was no longer visible. It had been replaced by his. That conversation ended, but what truly ended was trust. It wasn't the absence of comfort that hurt most. It was the absence of acknowledgement. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "To be tolerant with others and strict with yourself, that is the path of wisdom." Yet tolerance does not mean surrendering your dignity to indifference. A wise person can forgive another's blindness, but he doesn't remain where his feelings are dismissed. Because every time you allow someone to belittle your inner life, you teach them that your emotions are negotiable, and what is left of respect when your pain becomes invisible. The Stoics valued empathy as a quiet form of strength. To listen deeply is to practice awareness, to perceive without judgment, to comfort without self-interest. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But those who diminish others' worries do the opposite. They speak to be heard, not to understand. They seek the stage, even in moments that demand silence. Think for a moment about what happens inside you when that kind of person speaks. Your body tenses, your mind begins to retreat. You start to feel smaller, even foolish for having opened up. And in time, you learn the dangerous art of silence, not the Stoic silence that protects peace, but the silence of resignation. You stop sharing. You stop trusting. You begin to believe that empathy is rare, that being understood is too much to ask. This, too, is a kind of loneliness. But the Stoics would remind you, you cannot force understanding from others. You can only choose where to place your heart. Seneca taught that gratitude and compassion are the pillars of all human bonds. When those pillars crumble, the building cannot stand. A person who mocks or ignores another's suffering is not strong. They are hollow, and if you stay too close to them, they will hollow you too. So take note of how people react when you reveal your worries. The one who listens without interruption, whose eyes stay still, who asks, "How can I help?" That person deserves a place in your life. But the one who rushes to outdo your sorrow with their own or dismisses it with tired comparisons is showing you a truth that no apology can repair. They are incapable of meeting you where you are. Sometimes distancing yourself from those who lack empathy feels harsh. But think of it not as rejection, think of it as preservation. Your peace is not built for constant dismissal. Your soul deserves conversation that nourishes, not drains. The Stoics often reminded themselves that kindness should not make you foolish. You can care for others without letting them diminish you. You can forgive their ignorance while walking away from their noise. In a world where everyone speaks but few truly listen, empathy becomes sacred. It's what binds human souls together in quiet understanding. Protect that bond by surrounding yourself with those who know how to hold your words gently, who do not measure your pain against theirs. And when you find such people, treasure them. They are the rarest kind of wealth. For those who refuse to listen, let them go with grace. They will learn eventually that a heart deaf to others becomes empty. Do not let their emptiness echo inside you. Walk on with clarity, knowing that true strength lies not in enduring coldness, but in preserving warmth. Because the Stoic's heart, though calm and disciplined, is never indifferent. It feels deeply, but chooses wisely. And when someone treats your suffering as small, remember, your worth is not defined by their blindness. It is defined by your courage to keep your compassion alive, even when theirs has long been lost. Now imagine you're sitting across from someone you've known for years, a friend, a colleague, maybe even a family member, and every time the conversation deepens, they steer it toward convincing you that their beliefs are the only truth. They speak not to connect, but to conquer. What begins as dialogue turns into quiet warfare, and before long, you find yourself defending your very right to think. The Stoics knew this kind of encounter well. They lived in an empire of competing philosophies, religions, and political loyalties, yet they taught that peace is found not in converting others, but in mastering oneself. I remember a man I once admired for his intelligence. Every talk with him started pleasantly enough, but it never stayed that way. Whether the topic was work, ethics, or faith, he needed to win. He believed his perspective was the only rational one, that everyone else was lost in confusion. At first, I tried to reason with him, to meet his fire with calm logic, but it always ended the same, with fatigue. What I learned later was that he didn't seek understanding. He sought affirmation. He wasn't sharing beliefs. He was demanding agreement. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them knows anything about the subject." The Stoic's task is not to dominate minds, but to refine his own. People who impose their ideology mistake certainty for wisdom. They think that to persuade is to prove strength, but it only shows attachment to ego, to approval, to control. A person grounded in truth doesn't need to shout it. They embody it quietly as a way of living. Arguments of this kind often disguise something deeper: fear. Fear that their worldview might crumble without others' validation. Fear that difference threatens identity. The Stoic recognizes this insecurity and refuses to feed it. When someone insists that you adopt their beliefs, they're really begging for you to carry their doubts, but you do not need to inherit the unrest of others. As Epictetus advised, if someone speaks ill of you, do not defend yourself, but answer, "He did not know my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these." In other words, humility disarms pride. I remember one evening when the same friend pressed me again, this time about politics. His tone sharpened, his words cut, and I felt the old pull to respond. But instead of defending my view, I asked him why it mattered to him that I agreed. That silence that followed was heavier than any argument could be, because confrontation often hides the wish to control. And when you take away the reaction, control dissolves. He eventually changed the subject, not because I'd won, but because I refused to play. The Stoic doesn't silence others. He simply refuses to lose himself in noise. Every time you argue with someone who refuses to listen, you hand them your serenity. The goal is not to avoid all disagreement, but to recognize when conversation ceases to be an exchange and becomes a contest. When that shift happens, peace demands withdrawal. Walk away, not in contempt but in quiet strength. It's not surrender, it's preservation. In life, you will meet people who cannot rest until they've converted you to their cause, their faith, their worldview. They will call it guidance, concern, even love. But genuine care respects autonomy. As Seneca wrote, we should not choose those who are most agreeable, but those who can make us better. The right companions challenge your thinking without violating it. They expand your perspective without erasing it. Over time, I learned that wisdom doesn't bloom in the echo of agreement. It grows in the soil of difference. When you encounter those who preach certainty, offer curiosity instead of anger. Ask questions that invite reflection, not confrontation. The truly strong do not shout their beliefs from the mountaintop. They live them quietly in the valley, where the noise of pride cannot reach. The Stoic mind understands that diversity of thought is not chaos, it's harmony in a larger design. To demand uniformity is to fear truth, for truth doesn't shrink in the face of questions, it becomes clearer. So when you meet someone determined to change your convictions, remain calm. You owe no conversion, only respect. Listen if you wish, but do not absorb. Smile, thank them for sharing, and walk away with your peace intact. Because at the end of the day, your beliefs are not fragile things needing defense. They are the quiet reflections of your reasoned experience. You do not strengthen them by arguing with every challenger. You strengthen them by living them well. Let others preach, persuade, and proclaim. You, instead, embody. The world does not need more noise, it needs examples, and that is the heart of Stoic wisdom, to live with conviction but without imposition, to stand firm in what you believe, yet remain open to truth in all its forms. For the one who insists on being right loses the chance to be wise. And the one who guards his peace amidst the storms of opinion, that is the soul who truly understands freedom. There comes a moment in every life when the presence of someone once dear begins to weigh heavier than their absence. You meet them, speak with them, even smile, but something feels hollow. The laughter doesn't land, the warmth isn't there, and afterward you walk away with an ache you can't quite explain. That ache is the quiet signal that the connection has shifted. It's no longer built on shared growth, but on memory. The Stoics would say, this is the nature of all things. Everything changes, and to resist that change is to invite suffering. I remember when I first felt it. A childhood friend I had once been inseparable from called after years apart. Our conversations used to stretch into the night, full of plans, mischief, and dreams of who we'd become. But now, sitting across from him in a quiet cafe, the rhythm was gone. Every sentence felt forced, every laugh rehearsed. We were polite, but behind every word hovered the ghost of who we used to be. I tried to reach for that old ease, but it was gone. And I realized something. We weren't wrong for growing apart. We were simply different people now, still kind, but walking different paths. The Stoic view of relationships is deeply compassionate but unsentimental. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that everything is temporary: friendships, possessions, even the body we inhabit. To cling to what has already transformed is to fight the flow of nature, yet letting go does not mean rejection. It means honoring what once was without trying to revive it. Some connections are meant to be chapters, not lifelong stories. The art lies in recognizing when a chapter has ended and having the grace to close the page gently. We live in a world that glorifies loyalty without discernment. People say real friends never drift apart, as if change were betrayal. But nothing could be further from truth. The Stoics would call that attachment, and attachment, when it ignores reality, is a form of self-deception. When you cling to what no longer fits, you suffocate both yourself and the other person. True loyalty isn't forcing permanence, it's wishing them well even as paths diverge. There's beauty in acknowledging that two people can love what they shared and still walk away. When you release someone without resentment, you preserve the dignity of the bond. You allow gratitude to take the place of guilt. Seneca once wrote, "Every new beginning comes from another beginning's end." Letting go is not loss, it's transition. It's making room for the next season of your life to unfold naturally. Think of relationships like a dance. In the beginning, the steps align effortlessly. You move together without thought. But as the rhythm changes, one leads differently, the other hesitates, and the harmony begins to fade. To keep forcing the same choreography is to stumble. The wise thing is to step back, bow with respect, and let the music carry each of you where it needs to go next. That is not failure, it is understanding. I've met people who stayed in friendships long past their expiration out of guilt. They feared appearing cold or ungrateful. Yet every encounter left them feeling drained, performing politeness instead of sharing truth. They mistook endurance for virtue. But Stoicism teaches that peace must not be sacrificed to appearances. When a connection repeatedly leaves you anxious, heavy, or restless, it's a sign that the relationship exists only in memory. Continuing it becomes an act of denial. Letting go doesn't erase the good moments. It protects them. It keeps them intact, untainted by resentment or disappointment. I think back to that friend from my youth and realize that stepping away preserved what was pure between us. I can remember the laughter without bitterness, the shared beginnings without regret. We didn't fail each other. We simply fulfilled the purpose we had in each other's lives. There is a quiet maturity in knowing when to step back. It's the wisdom of water finding its own level. When the river changes course, it doesn't mourn the stones it leaves behind. It keeps flowing, shaping new paths. That is how the Stoic heart learns to love, without clutching, without demanding permanence. You can still care deeply and yet know when it's time to release. So if you feel uneasy each time you meet someone who once brought joy, if the air grows heavy where it used to feel light, don't rush to fix it. Breathe, observe. Perhaps nothing is broken, perhaps it's simply finished, and that is allowed. Honor what the connection taught you. Carry the lessons, not the weight. The world teaches us to hold tight. Stoicism teaches us to hold wisely. To let go is not to stop loving, but to stop resisting the truth that love, like everything alive, changes form. Sometimes it becomes distance, sometimes silence, sometimes a memory that warms rather than wounds. Accept it with gratitude, because peace doesn't come from forcing closeness, it comes from alignment. When a relationship no longer fits, let it rest in the place it belongs, the past. And as you walk forward, carry no bitterness, only appreciation. What was real will always remain real in memory, and what no longer serves your growth will gently fade, as it should. That is not loss. That is liberation. The kind that clears your heart for new connections, truer ones, aligned with who you are now. And when you learn to release with calmness instead of grief, you begin to understand one of the deepest Stoic truths. To love something fully is to accept that one day you may have to let it go. Now imagine this. You wake up already carrying a quiet exhaustion. You go about your day, managing the weight of your own responsibilities, trying to hold yourself together. Then your phone rings. The name on the screen is familiar, someone you've known for years. You answer, expecting conversation, perhaps connection. Instead, what you hear is a flood, a torrent of complaints, worries, frustrations, all spilling endlessly. They talk, you listen. They sigh, you comfort. They say they feel better, and you're left feeling worse. Hours later, when the call ends, the silence in the room feels heavier than before. You sit there drained, wondering why being there for someone always seems to mean abandoning yourself. The Stoics would say that compassion must have measure, because even kindness without balance becomes a form of self-harm. I remember a time when I learned this lesson the hard way. A woman named Sarah, a former colleague, once filled that role in my life. At first, her vulnerability drew me in. She always seemed on the edge of crisis. Too much work, too little support, endless frustrations with the world. I wanted to help. I thought listening was love, that patience was virtue. But the months went by, and every conversation was the same. She never asked about my life, never noticed when I was struggling. I began to realize that what she sought wasn't understanding, it was an audience. My empathy had become her escape, and when my own mother fell ill, when my nights were spent between hospital rooms and work deadlines, she still called to complain about her boss or her husband. The moment I said I couldn't talk, she grew distant, offended, as if my humanity had somehow failed her. That was the day I understood what Epictetus meant when he said, "We must discipline ourselves not only in what we do, but in what we endure." We are taught to believe that kindness means infinite availability. But the Stoics knew that without boundaries, even virtue decays. They saw the mind as a garden, capable of beauty, but easily overrun if left unguarded. Allowing others to plant their misery in your soil without care is not compassion, it's negligence. A garden cannot flourish when it is trampled daily by those who seek refuge, but never restoration. When you find yourself repeatedly absorbing someone else's chaos, ask, is this love or is this surrender? The difference between sharing pain and unloading pain is subtle but profound. Sharing invites connection, unloading demands sacrifice. One seeks healing through mutual understanding, the other seeks relief at any cost. The Stoic path teaches discernment between the two. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the human mind mirrors the company it keeps. When you constantly surround yourself with those who dwell in negativity, you begin to reflect their despair. You lose the stillness that allows clarity. And clarity to a Stoic is sacred. It is the foundation of all virtue. It took me time to learn how to draw that line. I began by observing quietly the pattern of our interactions, how every message from Sarah carried the same tone, how every meeting ended with me empty and her satisfied. I noticed how her words never changed, how her stories circled the same orbit of misery. When I finally set a boundary, she accused me of being cold, unfeeling, selfish. But there was no anger in me, only peace. Because Stoic compassion is not the fire that burns you alive to warm others. It is the steady light that shows them where the door is. If they choose not to walk through, it is not your duty to carry them. Seneca wrote that the greatest kindness is often a simple refusal. At first, this sounds harsh, but he meant that protecting your peace is the highest gift you can give to yourself and, indirectly, to others. When you stop allowing people to feed on your patience, they are forced to face the consequences of their avoidance. Sometimes your silence is what makes them finally listen to themselves. You cannot save someone who finds comfort in their suffering. You can only live in a way that shows another way exists. I began to apply this principle with quiet consistency. When conversations turned into endless complaint loops, I would listen once, then redirect. What do you plan to do about it? It was a question few could answer. Those who truly wanted change appreciated it. Those who only wanted sympathy disappeared. The distance that followed wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. For the first time in years, I felt energy returning to me. Space in my mind to think, to breathe, to live. The Stoics believed that our energy is a finite currency. Every thought, every emotion we give away must serve purpose. If it doesn't, we are wasting the most precious resource we have: attention. You become what you give your attention to, Marcus wrote. When you give your attention endlessly to complaint, you inherit it. The emotional weight of others attaches itself to you, and slowly, without noticing, you begin to mirror their despair. Your peace becomes collateral in their storm. There's a dangerous illusion in believing that you can heal others by absorbing their pain. In truth, it only multiplies suffering. Stoicism calls for a higher form of empathy, one that helps without losing self-command. It's the empathy of presence, not pity, the compassion of understanding, not enabling. A Stoic doesn't run from the cries of the world, but neither do they drown in them. They know that to stand firm in another's storm, one must first anchor their own mind. So if you find yourself being the emotional shelter for someone who never leaves, take a step back. Ask yourself, do they seek help or habit? Do they want change or attention? The Stoic's role is not to fix others, but to illuminate their freedom, to remind them by example that peace comes from within, not from constant venting. When you listen, listen once. Offer insight, if it's welcome. But when the same story returns without progress, choose silence. Not the silence of indifference, but the silence of wisdom. The silence that says, I will not contribute to your stagnation. It is never easy to pull away from someone who has made you their refuge. The guilt will whisper that you are cruel, that you've failed them. But remember, no one can drink endlessly from an empty well. You cannot pour from a heart that has been drained of stillness. The world doesn't need more martyrs of empathy. It needs calm souls who show that love and boundaries can coexist. One evening, months after I had distanced myself from Sarah, she sent a brief message. No complaints this time. Just a few words. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I realized I kept talking about my problems instead of solving them. I'm trying to change. I smiled at the screen and felt no triumph, only quiet understanding. Sometimes withdrawing from someone's chaos is the most compassionate act you can perform. It forces them to meet themselves. The Stoic ideal of friendship is one of reciprocity, respect, and emotional maturity. True companions share both burdens and joys. They know when to speak and when to stay silent. They encourage without clinging, listen without losing themselves. When you find such people, hold them close. They are rare. But when you find those who mistake your patience for permission, let them go with grace. As you walk through life, remember this truth. Your peace is not selfish. It is sacred. Guard it as you would guard your breath. Listen with compassion, but never with surrender. Help where you can, but never at the cost of your sanity. Because the Stoic heart, though vast, is not infinite. It beats strongest when kept free from the weight of what does not belong to it. And when you finally learn to give without depletion, to love without losing yourself, you will discover a serenity that no storm can touch. A serenity born from the courage to say, quietly but firmly, "This burden is not mine to carry." There are few disappointments more subtle than waiting for someone who never shows up. You sit at the cafe, glancing at the door every few minutes, trying not to look like you're waiting. You tell yourself there must be traffic, that maybe they lost track of time. But as the minutes stretch into an hour, the truth begins to settle. The issue isn't circumstance, it's consideration. You weren't forgotten accidentally. You were simply never prioritized. The Stoics would tell you that such moments are not misfortunes, but mirrors, revealing what others value and how we too must learn to value ourselves. I once had a friend who lived by easy promises. She was warm, expressive, quick to say, "Let's meet soon," or "I'll be there. Count on me." Her words were full of lightness, her tone sincere enough to believe. And yet, time after time, her actions dissolved into silence. She would cancel plans last minute, forget commitments, or simply disappear without explanation. I'd tell myself she meant well, that life was busy, unpredictable. But eventually, I realized that meaning well isn't the same as meaning what you say. In the Stoic sense, intention without follow-through is not virtue, it's weakness disguised as charm. Seneca once wrote, "A promise is a debt. He who forgets it is a debtor." The Stoics understood promises not as casual gestures, but as moral contracts. To make one is to pledge a piece of your integrity. Breaking it, even in small things, fractures your own character before it harms another. When someone repeatedly makes commitments and fails to honor them, they are teaching you who they are, a person at war with their own word. And when you continue to excuse it, you're teaching yourself that your time holds less value than their convenience. We live in a culture addicted to easy speech. Words are cheap. Attention is scattered. People say, "I'll call, I'll help, I'll show up," without understanding the weight of those syllables. But Stoicism demands presence. It demands that speech and action move as one. Marcus Aurelius urged, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This is the discipline of alignment, where thought, word, and deed stand together like soldiers under one command. To live any other way is to fracture yourself. In my friendship, the fractures became impossible to ignore. The last time we met, she promised we'd plan a weekend trip together just as we used to. I felt a flicker of the old warmth, that familiar sense of belonging. But when the weekend came, she vanished again. No message, no apology. Days later, I saw photos of her elsewhere, smiling with a new crowd, our plans erased as if they had never existed. The pain was not in her absence, but in what it revealed, that I had been treating inconsistency as affection, that I had mistaken attention for loyalty. The Stoic practice of reflection teaches that we should not let the actions of others define our peace. Epictetus said, "We suffer not from events, but from our judgment about them." When I finally stopped interpreting her neglect as personal failure, I saw the lesson clearly. Her broken promises were not insults, they were information. They showed me how easily people speak of loyalty when it costs them nothing. And they reminded me that self-respect begins where tolerance for carelessness ends. It's tempting to cling to such relationships out of nostalgia. We remember their better moments and convince ourselves that those fragments represent the whole. But the Stoic knows that virtue is proven not in moments of ease, but in consistency. A person's character is not what they claim when they feel good, it's what they uphold when it's inconvenient. Someone who values you will show it, not speak it. Words may comfort, but behavior clarifies. Still, letting go of those who break promises isn't about resentment, it's about realignment. When you stop waiting for someone who doesn't show up, you make space for people who will. When you stop accepting half-efforts, you start living with full honesty. Stoicism calls this ataraxia, tranquility born from living in accordance with truth. It doesn't mean you close your heart. It means you open your eyes. One evening, I sat again at that same cafe, not waiting, not checking my phone, simply being. The table where disappointment once sat became a symbol of something else: self-respect. I ordered coffee for one and watched the world move quietly around me. For the first time, there was no bitterness, only gratitude. Gratitude for the clarity that broken promises bring. They reveal what kind of loyalty surrounds you and, more importantly, what kind of loyalty lives within you. The Stoics believed that every experience, even betrayal, is material for virtue. The one who keeps their word despite being surrounded by liars remains unshaken. The one who shows up on time, who honors their commitments, builds a fortress of reliability around their soul. To live by your word is to live in harmony with nature, for the universe itself is consistent. The sun does not rise one day and forget the next. The seasons do not promise change and then remain still. So why should we? If you've been waiting for someone who repeatedly lets you down, stop waiting. Not in anger, but in wisdom. People who treat your time lightly will never treat your heart with care. And you, who have endured disappointment quietly, must now learn what the Stoics called euthymia, the confidence that comes from walking your own path, undistracted by the noise of others' unreliability. Your peace begins the moment you stop expecting integrity from those who have never practiced it. Promise yourself what others failed to keep. Be the one who shows up, who speaks truthfully, who follows through even when no one is watching. The world has enough talkers. Be among the few who live as they speak. And when you do, you'll find that the weight of unkept promises fades, not because others changed, but because you chose to keep your own. So walk away from those who make promises like sandcastles, beautiful in form, but erased by the first wave of reality. Stand firm in your own truth, steady in your word, consistent in your action. The Stoic's heart is quiet, not because it feels nothing, but because it rests on the solid ground of integrity. And once you learn to keep your own promises, you will never again tolerate those who treat their words as wind. There's a unique kind of fatigue that comes from hearing the same sorrow told again and again by the same voice. You listen once with compassion, twice with patience, and then a third time with a quiet ache that whispers, "Nothing will change." The words may vary, but the rhythm stays the same, a cycle of complaint without reflection, of misery without motion. At first you tell yourself it's kindness to keep listening, but eventually you begin to realize that some people don't want healing. They want an audience. The Stoics saw this pattern not as misfortune but as a warning. Energy given without purpose becomes decay. I remember a colleague named Daniel who lived in that circle of repetition. Every conversation began with the same lines: how unfair his job was, how ungrateful his boss, how unlucky his fate. At first, I tried to help. I offered ideas, reframed his perspective, even shared Stoic lessons about control, discipline, detachment. He nodded, agreed, promised to change. But days later, we were back at the same place. It became clear he didn't want solutions. He wanted sympathy on demand, and each time I indulged it, I left heavier, my calmness chipped away by his constant need for confirmation of his misery. Epictetus warned, "It is not the things themselves that disturb men, but their judgments about those things." Yet some people cling to their suffering because it gives them identity. Misery becomes familiar, a shield against responsibility. To release it would mean to confront their own agency, and that frightens them. So they replay the same narrative again and again until it becomes their truth. A Stoic must see this clearly and choose compassion without captivity. There's a great difference between listening and absorbing. Listening is presence, absorbing is surrender. One allows empathy to flow, the other lets it drown you. When you continually listen to those who never change, you start carrying burdens that are not yours. Their complaints become noise in your own thoughts. Their fears begin to color your worldview. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If that is true, then every complaint we allow too deeply into our mind stains us just a little. I used to tell myself that patience was an endless virtue, but Stoicism taught me that patience without boundaries is self-erasure. You can only be a refuge to those who seek rest, not those who build their homes in your compassion. Daniel once called me late at night, his tone frantic. I listened for an hour, reassured him, offered new ways to act. He thanked me, said he'd finally take control. 2 days later, the same call, the same story, as though time had never passed. In that moment, I understood that some people do not seek listeners. They seek replacements for accountability. And if you let them, they will use your peace to avoid facing their own turmoil. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make you better. This is not arrogance, it is survival. The company you keep shapes the climate of your soul. Those who speak endlessly of problems without pursuing solutions do not want elevation, they want company in their descent. And pity, no matter how sincere, cannot rescue someone who refuses to stand." It took courage to step away. I began to limit our talks, to respond briefly, to redirect the conversation toward action. "What can you do about it?" I would ask. At first, he grew defensive, then distant, and eventually silent. The silence that followed wasn't loss, it was liberation. I had reclaimed the mental stillness I had traded away under the illusion of kindness. True empathy doesn't mean indulging despair. It means guiding others toward clarity. Sometimes that guidance comes through words, other times through absence. By refusing to participate in endless complaint, you remind others of their own power. You show by example that peace is not a gift to be taken, it's a discipline to be practiced. The Stoics never denied emotion. They simply refused to let emotion become identity. When people define themselves by their wounds, they close the door to healing. The more they repeat their pain, the deeper it carves into their mind. And when you sit too long beside them, you start to mistake their suffering for depth, their hopelessness for honesty. But hopelessness is not authenticity, it's avoidance. I learned that compassion is not measured by how long you listen, but by how wisely you respond. Sometimes that means saying, "I care about you, but I can't continue this conversation unless you want to change." Such words are uncomfortable, even harsh, but truth often is. A real friend doesn't soothe endlessly, they awaken. A Stoic friend reminds others that while pain is inevitable, surrender is optional. Over time, I noticed something remarkable. When I stopped feeding Daniel's complaints, he began slowly to change. Without an audience, he was forced to face himself. He started acting, small steps, but steps nonetheless. That taught me an unexpected lesson. Enabling someone's weakness is the cruelest form of comfort. True compassion sometimes demands distance. You cannot control who grows beside you, but you can control the soil in which your peace is planted. If you fill it with the weeds of others' complaints, your serenity will die before it ever blossoms. The Stoic gardener protects his soil, not out of selfishness, but out of duty to what must flourish there. The world needs examples of calm, not echoes of chaos. So when you find yourself caught in the same conversations, hearing the same stories, feeling your patience erode like sand beneath the tide, pause. Ask yourself if your listening serves healing or habit. You owe no one endless access to your attention. Energy, once given, cannot be reclaimed. Spend it as the wise spend time, deliberately, with purpose. In the end, remember that peace is not found in avoiding the suffering of others, but in refusing to drown in it. Listen once, guide if you can, and when the lesson is refused, walk away in silence. Because silence in such moments is not abandonment, it is clarity. It says, "I will not carry what you refuse to set down." The Stoics believed that wisdom is mercy directed inward first, then outward. When you preserve your calm, you preserve your capacity to serve meaningfully. So stay gentle but guarded. Listen but don't absorb. Care but don't collapse. For the soul that protects its peace can lift others. The one that neglects it will sink beside them. And the truest kindness of all is to keep yourself steady enough to remain a light long after their storms have passed. There's a kind of silence that follows a certain kind of person, the one who never stops talking about their greatness. You've met them before. Their words shine with the memory of past victories, polished by repetition until they sound more like mythology than truth. At first, their stories are captivating, even inspiring. But over time, you notice something strange. Every conversation bends toward their achievements, and every pause is an invitation for admiration. You realize they aren't sharing their experiences, they're performing them. What you're hearing isn't confidence, it's captivity. They are trapped in the echo of their own past. The Stoics saw this as one of life's quiet tragedies, when a person mistakes yesterday's glory for today's worth. I once knew a man like that. He had won awards, traveled widely, and been praised in his field. The first time we met, I listened with genuine interest. His stories sparkled with detail, names, events, triumphs. But each time we spoke, I noticed the same pattern. The tales never changed. They simply looped. His life had become a museum, carefully curated but frozen in time. When the conversation turned toward the present, his tone faltered. He would deflect, gloss over, or quickly steer back to old accomplishments. It was as if he lived in a house full of portraits, surrounded by memories that kept him from seeing the open window. Seneca once wrote, "He suffers more who remembers bliss and knows it will return no more." To dwell endlessly on past triumphs is to mourn them in disguise. The Stoic mind understands that joy, like pain, must move through us, not define us. The past is a place for gratitude, not residence. When we cling to what was, we stop participating in what is. And when we refuse to release old victories, we quietly admit that we no longer believe in new ones. Boasting often hides a wound, a fear that the present holds nothing as bright as what came before. But the Stoic does not fear change. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything is in flux. To resist that truth is to fight nature itself. The world renews itself through impermanence. Rivers flow forward, not backward. Even the stars we see are long dead lights, still traveling across the sky. How foolish then to try to live in yesterday's sunlight when the dawn still rises each morning. With time, I came to see that my friend's stories were not arrogance, but armor. Behind every boast was a quiet plea. Tell me I still matter. The Stoics would not mock this. They would meet it with understanding, but also with honesty. For the cure to vanity is not ridicule, it is awareness. When we gently confront someone's fixation on the past, we hold up a mirror to their stagnation. Sometimes that reflection hurts, but truth always heals before it wounds. There's a fine line between celebrating success and being consumed by it. Celebration is alive. It breathes gratitude and humility. Boasting, on the other hand, is rigid, born of fear. It seeks validation instead of connection. The Stoic approach is simple. Let your life today be proof enough. Speak less of who you were and more through what you are. The quiet man who works diligently in the present has no need for applause. His peace is his recognition. I recall one particular evening when my friend's monologue ran long, his voice filling the space with old achievements. I sat silently, then asked him, "That's incredible, but what are you building now?" For a moment, he froze. The room seemed to still around him. Then he smiled faintly and said, "Nothing, I suppose." The humility of that moment softened him. For the first time, he looked less like a man defending his past and more like someone ready to live again. Sometimes one honest question can break years of illusion. The Stoics teach that identity must never rest on external things, not wealth, not praise, not trophies. Epictetus reminded his students that what is yours is only your faculty of choice. Everything else is borrowed. To boast of possessions, of recognition, even of virtue, is to forget that fortune can reclaim at any time what it once gave. But wisdom, once cultivated, remains. The man who lives by his principles doesn't need to announce them. They announce him through the calmness of his presence. If you find yourself around those who boast incessantly, see it as a chance to practice discernment. You can listen without absorbing. You can respect their story without feeding their vanity. But protect your energy. Do not become their audience for long. Boasting seeks mirrors, not companions. A Stoic offers no reflection for pride to admire. Respond with sincerity once, then redirect toward the present. Ask what they're creating now, who they're becoming. If they can't answer, you've already seen the truth. They are trapped in time, and only they can set themselves free. We must also guard against this same habit within ourselves. Everyone carries moments of glory, times when we were seen, chosen, celebrated. The danger lies in turning those memories into monuments. The Stoics practiced daily humility to prevent this, writing reminders like "you are mortal" or "you could die today." These were not grim thoughts, they were grounding ones. They freed the mind from illusion and returned it to action. The Stoic knows that life is too brief to live as a curator of your own museum. Each day demands fresh effort, renewed purpose. Humility, then, is not denial of greatness. It is the recognition that greatness must keep growing or it begins to rot. The fruit that clings to its branch too long spoils. The soul that refuses to evolve becomes bitter. True confidence is silent because it does not need protection. It looks forward, not backward. It doesn't say, "I was," but rather, "I am still becoming." So if you encounter someone who cannot stop talking about the past, let them speak, but do not linger in their nostalgia. The Stoic in you should listen with kindness, then move on with intention. Life is too sacred to be spent orbiting the ghosts of yesterday. And if you ever catch yourself tempted to boast, pause and ask, what am I doing today that would make my future self proud? That question brings you back to the present, the only place where peace and purpose truly exist. In the end, silence will always outshine noise. The person who lives with quiet dignity, grounded in the present, leaves a stronger mark than one who shouts about who they were. Let your work speak, your presence teach, your integrity echo. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." When you live that truth fully, you no longer need to speak of greatness because you've already become it, here, now, in this very moment. Then comes the calm after the storm, a stillness that feels almost unfamiliar. You've released what no longer belongs, and now begins the quieter work, not of fighting, but of building. The Stoics taught that real strength appears after detachment, when you turn from what hurt you toward what will heal you. The noise is gone. What remains is space, and in that space, something new is waiting to grow. As we step into the next part of this journey, imagine yourself standing in that silence. You've already walked away from what once consumed your peace, from the noise, the manipulation, the small betrayals that disguised themselves as affection. The stillness feels strange at first, almost too clean, but within it, something stirs. It's not loneliness, it's clarity, the quiet foundation of transformation. At first, separation feels like emptiness. The absence of those familiar patterns, even the painful ones, leaves a hollow in your days. You might catch yourself reaching for your phone, expecting a message from someone who no longer has access to you. Your mind replays memories not because you want to return to them, but because it hasn't yet learned how to live without them. The Stoics understood this ache intimately. They taught that detachment is not the absence of feeling, it is the mastery of it. To detach is to remember without clinging, to feel without drowning, to see without illusion. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." The first lesson after letting go is to reclaim your estimation, to take back the power you unknowingly gave away. What hurt you wasn't their departure, it was the weight you placed on their presence. You believed they were necessary for your completeness. But the truth is clearer now. You were never missing anything that was truly yours. Let's pause here. Picture the mind as a lake after a storm. The winds have passed, but the ripples remain. You can't force them to still. They must settle naturally. So too with the emotions that follow separation. You don't rush to suppress them. You simply observe. You let them rise, shimmer, and fade on their own. The Stoic practice of observation, of seeing things as they are, without labeling them as good or bad, becomes your first act of freedom. You begin to watch your pain like a philosopher watches the stars, distant, curious, patient. I remember a woman who once told me she didn't know who she was without the person she had just left. She said it with a tremor in her voice, but behind the sadness was something else. Possibility. For years, her identity had been built on reflection, like a moon borrowing its light from another's sun. When that source disappeared, she believed she had gone dark. But in time, she realized the light she sought was her own all along. She began to wake early, walk alone, eat in silence, read without distraction. What she thought was loneliness became discovery. What she thought was an ending became her first true beginning. Seneca reminded us, "No man can be free who is a slave to his body." But freedom extends beyond the physical. It includes the emotional, the mental, the spiritual. When you cut ties with what no longer serves you, you are breaking chains that were never meant to define your soul. Yet freedom demands responsibility. It is not merely the absence of control, it is the presence of choice. What you do with your newfound solitude determines whether it becomes healing or isolation. You may notice that the mind tries to fill the void quickly with distraction, new attachments, noise disguised as progress. But the Stoic way teaches restraint. Resist the urge to replace what you lost before you understand why you needed it. Solitude isn't punishment, it's recalibration. When you can sit in silence and feel whole, you have mastered what most people spend a lifetime chasing. In this quiet phase, a kind of strength begins to grow, a strength born not of resistance, but of stillness. It's subtle at first. You speak less. You react slower. You start to recognize which thoughts belong to you and which are remnants of old conditioning. You no longer flinch at the thought of disapproval or rejection because your worth has detached itself from external validation. What others think of you becomes an echo, faint and irrelevant. The approval you used to chase now feels small compared to the vastness of self-respect. Think of how nature restores itself after a wildfire. The land looks barren at first, but beneath the ash, the soil is rich, ready for new life. This is the law of renewal that governs both earth and soul. The Stoics saw this cycle not as loss, but as transformation. Marcus wrote, "All things change, nothing dies. That includes you." The person who once tolerated disrespect no longer exists. The one who doubted their worth has been burned away, leaving behind a steadier foundation. But renewal is not automatic. It requires awareness. The mind loves to return to old habits because they feel familiar, even when they hurt. Watch for this. Each time you feel the pull toward what you've left behind, remind yourself, familiarity is not peace. You don't need to revisit the fire to remember that it burns. This is where your discipline becomes your armor. As Epictetus advised, no man is free who is not master of himself. Mastery begins with restraint, with the courage to stay still when everything inside you wants to reach back. There will be days when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if you made the right choice, when your solitude feels like exile rather than liberation. On those days, return to the core Stoic truth. Peace is not something you find. It is something you create, moment by moment, through the choices you make. Choose to see your solitude not as emptiness, but as evidence of growth. Choose to use your pain not as proof of weakness, but as training for wisdom. And slowly, something shifts. You begin to enjoy your own company. The quiet no longer threatens you, it nourishes you. You notice the small details again, the sound of rain, the rhythm of your breath, the ease of a morning with no expectations. You realize that the freedom you sought from others was always waiting within yourself. That realization is not loud or dramatic. It's a calm recognition, a soft exhale of truth. So as you stand now in the aftermath of endings, remember this: detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. To detach is to love without losing yourself, to give without emptying, to walk away without hate. It is to stand in the center of your own life and finally feel steady. What you left behind no longer defines you. What lies ahead no longer frightens you. This is where healing begins, not by filling the silence, but by becoming the kind of soul that no longer fears it. And from this stillness, a new kind of power emerges, the quiet power of one who needs nothing to be whole. Moving into the next chapter, imagine this. After the dust of separation has settled, you look in the mirror and realize how much of yourself had been shaped by what you once tolerated. Your reflection feels familiar but distant, like a photograph that's faded at the edges. The quiet around you is no longer painful, it's revealing. You start to notice how much space others once occupied inside you. This is the beginning of rebuilding, where you no longer define yourself by what you've endured, but by what you choose to become. At first, the idea of rebuilding feels uncertain. You've carried fragments for so long that wholeness feels foreign. But this is where the Stoics teach their most practical wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." The message is simple yet sharp. Identity is not reclaimed through thought alone, but through deliberate action. The more you act with integrity, the more you remember who you are. You don't rebuild the self through declarations, you rebuild it through consistency. Picture yourself like a craftsman returning to his workshop after years away. The tools are dusty, the bench uneven, but the skill remains. Each decision, each boundary, each act of discipline becomes a stroke of the chisel, shaping something stronger than before. Rebuilding your identity is not about becoming new. It's about returning to what was always there beneath the noise. The Stoics believed that virtue is innate. Life doesn't give you character, it reveals it through trial. I once met a man who had lost everything: a relationship, a career, even his confidence. For months he wandered through his own life, as if observing it from outside. One day he told me he had stopped trying to find himself. Instead, he decided to practice one Stoic principle each week. The first was restraint, then gratitude, then courage. He didn't talk about healing, he practiced it. And slowly, without noticing, he became grounded again. His peace returned not as a gift, but as a result of rhythm, daily, disciplined, intentional. By the time he realized it, he wasn't rebuilding his identity anymore. He was living it. This is what the Stoics meant when they said philosophy is not words, but a way of life. To rebuild yourself, you must act your way into clarity. It's not about erasing your past, it's about integrating it without being ruled by it. The scars remain, but they stop defining you. They become texture, not identity. Seneca wrote that fire tests gold and adversity tests the strong. You've already faced the fire. Now it's time to shape what remains. The process of rebuilding requires solitude, but not isolation. You start to re-evaluate who deserves access to your energy. You begin to value calm over attention, depth over noise. In this stillness, self-respect quietly returns. It doesn't announce itself, it simply replaces what used to hurt. You no longer need validation to feel real. Your actions become your proof. You learn to speak less and observe more, to respond rather than react. And in doing so, you find what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from disturbance. Rebuilding also means rewriting the stories you tell yourself. The mind loves repetition. It clings to old narratives because they feel safe, even when they're painful. I'm not enough. I always lose. People always leave. These are not truths. They are habits of thought. The Stoics trained themselves to question such illusions. When Marcus felt overwhelmed, he reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That simple reminder dismantles despair. You begin to see that every belief that weakens you exists only because you feed it. So you start rewriting. You replace "I was broken" with "I was refined." You replace "I lost everything" with "I cleared what no longer served me." This isn't denial, it's alignment with reality. The past happened, but its meaning is yours to decide. The Stoic way is not to erase pain, but to reinterpret it through strength. Life did not happen to you, it happened for your becoming. During this stage, confidence returns quietly. It doesn't roar, it breathes. You begin to move differently, speak differently, think differently. You no longer chase people or outcomes. You're not waiting to be chosen, you are choosing. The approval of others, once so essential, now feels small compared to the peace of self-trust. You start setting standards not out of pride, but out of clarity. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. I remember hearing someone say that peace is not when nothing happens, but when nothing disturbs you. That's the essence of Stoic freedom. You stop measuring success by outcomes and start measuring it by alignment with your values, your principles, your truth. Each day becomes a chance to prove to yourself that you can remain steady in a world built on movement. And there's beauty in this quiet evolution. You no longer seek revenge or recognition. You stop replaying the past, not because you've forgotten it, but because it no longer defines your horizon. You forgive, not for them, but for your own clarity. The Stoics often spoke of life as a play. You don't control the script, but you can choose how you perform your role. And when you perform it with virtue, no loss can truly harm you. So here you stand, stronger, steadier, and free from the illusions that once held you captive. Rebuilding isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the truth of who you've always been beneath the debris of disappointment. You are not defined by what you lost, but by what you've learned to live without. And in that simplicity, in that calm certainty, you discover what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look there." From here, life opens again, different, quieter but infinitely clearer. You've reclaimed your foundation, and with it, the ability to build something unshakable. Not from fear, not from need, but from the quiet conviction of someone who has finally learned to stand within their own peace. Now imagine the next stage of your transformation. The storm has passed, the rebuilding has begun, and yet something inside you still feels tethered to the weight of what once was. You've restored your ground, but the mind keeps wandering, pulling you back toward memories, emotions, and people that no longer belong in your present. This is where the true challenge begins, not in rebuilding your life, but in unhooking yourself from the invisible cords that tie you to the past. It happens quietly. A song, a scent, a familiar phrase, all of it stirs an old emotion. And before you realize it, you're back inside a memory you thought you'd buried. You feel the echo of old affection, the ghost of past anger. You remember the way someone used to make you feel seen, or small, or both. That's the nature of attachment. It doesn't live in the world around you. It lives in the folds of your mind. The Stoics understood this intimately. They taught that true freedom is not in changing circumstances, but in releasing the mental grip on them. As Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." To free yourself from emotional chains, you must first see them clearly. There was a time in my life when I believed I had moved on. The people who hurt me were gone, the wounds had closed, and I thought the battle was over. But then, one quiet afternoon, I caught myself replaying an old conversation in my head, word for word, tone for tone. I wasn't talking to that person anymore, but they still lived rent-free inside my thoughts. That's when I realized healing isn't about distance, it's about detachment. The mind can be more crowded than any room you've ever left. The Stoics saw the mind as a fortress and every unexamined emotion as a breach in the wall. To strengthen the fortress, you must guard its gates, your attention, your thoughts, your interpretations. When you catch yourself revisiting an old pain, don't fight it, observe it. Ask yourself, what am I really missing? Is it the person or the version of myself I used to be when they were here? Often, what we cling to is not love, but identity. We grieve not the loss of another, but the loss of who we were in their presence, recognizing that truth dissolves half the pain. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Each time your mind drifts back to the past, remind yourself that the event no longer exists. It survives only as a thought, and thoughts can be reshaped. The Stoic practice of cognitive discipline is about reassigning meaning. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What can this teach me now?" In that shift, you reclaim authorship over your story. The memory stops owning you. You begin to own it. I once spoke with a woman who struggled for years to let go of someone who had betrayed her trust. "I've forgiven him," she said, "but I can't stop thinking about it." I told her that forgiveness is not an erasure, it's a release. You don't forget what happened, you stop letting it define you. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is the refusal to carry another's wrong inside your own soul. It's the act of setting down a burden that was never yours to hold forever. When you realize this, you understand that peace is not given, it's reclaimed. Emotional unhooking doesn't mean numbness, it means reclaiming equilibrium. You start responding to memories with calm instead of reaction. The names that once quickened your pulse now pass through your mind like leaves in the wind, noticed but not held. This is not coldness, it's freedom. It's what Seneca called the serenity of the wise man, the ability to feel deeply without being enslaved by feeling. Letting go of emotional hooks also means confronting the quieter ones, the self-blame, the regrets, the endless what-ifs. The Stoics warned against replaying the unchangeable. "Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others," Marcus wrote. "Why are you not content to direct your course along the straight path?" Regret is a form of nostalgia for a past that never existed. Every choice you made belonged to the person you were at that time. Accept that truth with grace. You acted with the awareness you had. Now you have more. That is growth, not failure. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a river. In your hand, a stone engraved with every memory that still weighs you down. Anger, loss, what-ifs. You've carried it for so long that it feels like part of your hand. But what if you dropped it? The river would take it, and you would remain lighter. The Stoics practiced this visualization often, letting go not as theory, but as ritual. To release is to honor what was without chaining yourself to it. The moment you stop chasing closure from others, you give it to yourself. The moment you stop waiting for apologies, you free your time. The moment you stop reliving the past, you begin to live the present. This is emotional independence, the quiet realization that peace was never theirs to give or take. It was always yours to protect. From here, the heart begins to settle. The memories lose their edge. The faces blur into lessons. You begin to see the past not as a wound, but as a teacher. Every pain was a professor in disguise, every disappointment a lecture on resilience. You needed them to learn how to return to yourself. And now that you have, you no longer need their echoes to remind you who you are. So if your heart still aches for what has already left, let it. Feel it once more, then let it pass. You are not betraying your past by releasing it. You are honoring it by learning from it. And when you finally unhook from what you cannot control, you'll feel something extraordinary. Peace that doesn't depend on forgetting, but on understanding. This is where detachment transforms into clarity. You've stopped holding the chains that kept you bound, and your hands are free now. Free to build, to write, to love again, but with awareness instead of fear. As Seneca said, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." In letting old emotions die, you've learned how to live untethered. And from this freedom, life opens in a new way, simpler, quieter, but infinitely deeper. Because nothing binds the soul of a person who has learned to walk away not just from others, but from the weight within themselves. At this stage of the journey, imagine learning the quiet art of saying no without guilt. You've unhooked from the past, found stillness in solitude, and begun to rebuild what was lost. But now comes a deeper test, the test of boundaries. For even as you grow calmer, the world will still tug at you. People will still ask for more of your time, your energy, your forgiveness. And this is where many falter, believing that to refuse is to be cruel. But the Stoics saw it differently. They knew that to protect your peace is not selfishness, it is wisdom. Picture this moment. A friend calls again with a familiar request. You already know how the story ends. You'll say yes, out of habit or pity, and afterward you'll feel the same quiet resentment, tired, stretched thin, uneasy with yourself. It's in these moments that Marcus Aurelius's words return like a steady hand. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. To act from guilt is to betray your reason. To speak from fear is to abandon your virtue. Saying no becomes not defiance, but alignment. I remember a man I once knew who gave endlessly his time, his money, his attention. He said yes to everyone because he believed it made him kind. But kindness without discernment turns into erosion. The more he gave, the less of himself remained. He began to feel invisible in his own life, needed by everyone yet valued by none. One evening, over coffee, he confessed that he no longer recognized himself. "I thought saying yes was love," he said, "but I think I was just afraid of being disliked." That fear, more than anything, enslaved him. And that night, for the first time, he practiced refusal. It was awkward. It was small, but it was the beginning of his freedom. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Refusal is a kind of adversity, an internal one. Each no tests your strength against the weight of others' expectations. Each boundary is a mirror showing how much you respect your own values. To say no to what drains you is to say yes to clarity. The Stoics trained this discipline not to isolate themselves, but to live with precision, to give only where giving had purpose. So when the world begins to pull at you again, pause. Ask yourself 3 questions. Is this mine to carry? Does this align with my principles? Will this cost me my peace? If the answer betrays your center, step back. The Stoics believed that peace isn't found by controlling everything around you. It's found by mastering what you allow in. Every no that protects your virtue strengthens the walls of your inner fortress. This balance between compassion and firmness defines the mature soul. You can be gentle and still unmoved. You can love people deeply and still set limits that preserve your integrity. The oak tree offers shade, but doesn't bend for every wind. In the same way, a Stoic heart offers warmth without surrendering structure. Real love thrives in the presence of boundaries because only then can it remain honest. Let's imagine another scene. You're at work or with family, and someone asks for something that feels wrong. A favor that crosses your values or costs your rest. You feel the pressure to comply, to keep the peace. But peace built on self-betrayal is only silence in disguise. The Stoics warned against such false harmony. Marcus wrote, "To be calm is the highest achievement of the self. Calmness requires clarity, and clarity demands the courage to disappoint others. Better a moment of discomfort than a lifetime of resentment." The act of refusal teaches more than restraint. It reveals who truly respects you. Those who value you will understand your boundaries. Those who used you will vanish. Both outcomes are gifts. Epictetus taught that when you act with reason, you must accept what follows with equanimity. If your no offends someone, it simply exposes what they sought from you, a mirror of their own expectations. Let them go. The weight that falls away is not loss, it's liberation. Over time, you'll notice a shift. The guilt that once accompanied every refusal fades. The word no begins to feel clean, honest, necessary. You start to notice the difference between generosity and obligation. The first flows from strength, the second from fear. You realize that real compassion begins with self-respect. You cannot give peace you do not possess. There's a quiet dignity that comes from living with defined edges. You no longer chase approval. You no longer say yes to prove your worth. Your actions grow deliberate, your words fewer, your energy precise. People may call you distant, but what they're really noticing is your discipline. You've stopped scattering yourself to please the ungrateful, and that composure, steady, grounded, untouchable, is the mark of a soul in harmony. In time, saying no becomes effortless, not hard, not harsh, just natural, like a river choosing its course, unbothered by the stones it cannot move. The Stoic way is not resistance, it is flow with direction, to live by your own measure, not by the demands of others. You understand now that every choice is an investment of your life's energy, so you give carefully, and in return, you stay free. And when you look back, you'll see how far you've come, from pleasing others to protecting your peace, from overextending to standing firm. The man who once said yes to everything now says yes only to what matters. The woman who once feared rejection now carries calm like armor. The noise that used to rule your days no longer reaches you. This is where restraint turns into power. You've learned that a single no, spoken with calm conviction, carries more strength than 1,000 apologies. And in that truth, you find something rare, not dominance, not withdrawal, but balance. The kind of balance that lets you stand tall in the midst of others' chaos and still feel untouched. Because in the end, strength is not found in how much you endure, but in what you refuse to surrender. From here, picture what happens when silence has done its work and the mind begins to settle. The noise of others no longer defines you. The boundaries are drawn, the emotions unhooked, and the heart has learned to stand alone. This is the point where you begin to rebuild something sacred, the walls that protect your inner peace. Not walls of isolation, but of strength, invisible, calm and firm. The kind of boundaries that do not imprison you, but keep your spirit clean from the debris of other people's chaos. At first, this rebuilding feels unfamiliar. You may confuse it with coldness. After years of giving too much, withholding even a little feels unnatural. You'll hear whispers from the world. You've changed. You're distant. You don't care like you used to. And in those moments, you'll have to remember that caring does not mean collapsing. The Stoics taught that a strong soul must be guarded, for the unguarded mind is easily invaded. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself. These walls you are building are not made of pride, but of self-command." I once met a woman who struggled deeply with this. She had spent years being the reliable one, the person everyone turned to when things fell apart. Her strength was her identity, and yet it was also her burden. People loved her dependability, but never saw the exhaustion beneath it. One day, she told me she couldn't remember the last time she had done something for herself. She had built an empire of caretaking, but none of it was hers. It took her months to do something simple, say, "Not today." The first time she did, she cried. The tears weren't guilt, they were release. That was the moment her walls began to rise, not to keep people out, but to keep herself in. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." Many mistake this line, believing it calls for endless endurance. But what it truly means is balance, to give understanding to others without surrendering your structure. The Stoics never advocated for self-denial, they advocated for moderation, the middle path between generosity and depletion. The moment you start living this way, you begin to realize something extraordinary. Peace does not need to be protected from the world. It needs to be protected from your own impulses to please it. Every healthy boundary begins with one question. What am I allowing that costs me my peace? The answer is rarely loud. It hides in subtle acts. The conversations you don't want but still entertain, the favors you agree to though you're drained, the company you keep out of habit instead of harmony. Each small compromise chips away at your foundation. The Stoic practice is to notice without judgment, then correct without drama. Quietly, you start to pull back what was never meant to be given so freely. Rebuilding these boundaries is not resistance, it's refinement. It's choosing quality over quantity, depth over display. It's learning that not everyone deserves full access to your energy. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who will make you better." That isn't arrogance, it's discernment. You can wish everyone well and still walk your own way. You can forgive someone and never let them in again. Boundaries do not limit love. They make love pure. Imagine your peace as a garden. Every plant within it is a thought, an emotion, a choice. The fence you build around it isn't to keep life out. It's to protect the life inside. When the world knocks, you decide who enters, who stays, and who leaves. Some visitors bring shade, others trample the soil. To say no at the gate is not cruelty, it's cultivation. The Stoics saw this as an act of rational love, for only when your garden is tended can you offer others its fragrance. At this stage, you begin to notice how natural boundaries change the texture of your days. Conversations feel lighter because they are chosen, not endured. Silence feels fuller because it's yours, not imposed. You spend more time with people who understand presence and less with those who demand performance. Life begins to align quietly, like a room finally arranged after years of clutter. You realize that calm is not found, it is built, decision by decision, boundary by boundary. There's power in this restraint. The same calm that once made you seem passive now reveals itself as mastery. You stop explaining your limits to those committed to misunderstanding them. You stop defending your peace as if it were negotiable. When people push back against your growth, you see their discomfort for what it is. a sign that your silence now exposes what your compliance once concealed. One evening, I asked the woman I mentioned earlier how she felt months after learning to hold her boundaries. She smiled and said, "I still help people, but now I choose when." That one sentence carried an entire philosophy: choice, intention, freedom. Her kindness had not diminished. It had matured. It no longer bled. It flowed where it was needed. Marcus wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The same applies to boundaries. The pressure you once feared, the confrontation, the guilt, the discomfort becomes the very material that strengthens your structure. Each time you hold your line, the fear weakens and the peace expands. You start to live with a steadiness that no chaos can easily disturb. So if you've ever been told that your calm makes you cold, remember this: the fire that's contained burns longer. Stoic calm is not detachment. It's endurance refined into wisdom. You are no longer reacting to the world. You are responding to it with precision. Your time is intentional. Your words are measured. Your life feels lighter not because it's empty, but because it's aligned. And in that alignment, something profound happens. You stop chasing balance. You become it. The world may still spin with demands, noise and confusion, but within your walls, the air is still. The storm can rage outside, yet your foundation no longer shakes. This is what it means to live with inner architecture, to build a peace so steady that even when others crumble, you remain whole. From here, life no longer feels like defense. It becomes design. Every boundary you've built shapes the structure of a life that finally belongs to you. The noise fades, the space remains, and in that space, the mind stands upright, calm, grounded, unshakable. Entering the next stage, imagine waking one morning and realizing how quiet your world has become. The old noise, the endless drama, the unnecessary explanations, the battles to prove yourself has fallen away. What remains is space, clear and open, and within that space something rare begins to take shape. Gratitude. Not the shallow kind that demands perfection before it appears, but the deeper kind that sees value in the fragments. The Stoics called it the discipline of appreciation, the art of seeing abundance even where others see lack. You begin to notice it in small things: the stillness of early morning, the rhythm of your breath, the sunlight on the table where you eat alone but no longer feel lonely. The world hasn't changed, yet it feels new because you're finally seeing it without distortion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Gratitude for the Stoic isn't a reaction to comfort. It's a form of awareness that exists even in discomfort. I remember a man who had lost nearly everything: a job, a relationship, his sense of direction. When I met him, he looked hollow, as though life had been drained of all meaning. But over time, he began a simple practice. Each morning before the day began, he wrote down 3 things that still remained. Sometimes it was as small as the warmth of his coffee or the ability to walk under open sky. Some days he struggled to find even one, but he never stopped trying. Months later, when I saw him again, his eyes were steady. "Nothing's perfect," he said, "but I can finally see what's still good." That was Stoicism in motion, not denial of hardship, but gratitude in spite of it. Seneca taught that fortune gives and takes as she pleases, and the wise man learns to be grateful for both her gifts and her lessons. Gratitude doesn't ignore pain, it integrates it. It turns what could be bitterness into perspective. When you begin to see your life through this lens, every event becomes material for wisdom. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begin asking, "What is this giving me the chance to learn?" The shift is subtle but profound. It transforms suffering into strength. At this stage, gratitude becomes a kind of armor, not to protect you from feeling, but to help you face what comes without collapse. The grateful mind doesn't deny darkness. It simply refuses to forget the light. I once watched a friend endure a loss so heavy it could have broken her. Yet every day she found one thing to honor, a small act of kindness, a memory of love, a moment of beauty. "If I can still see one good thing," she told me, "then the darkness hasn't won." The Stoics would have nodded in agreement, for they believed that perception is everything. You can't control fortune, but you can always control how you look at her. Gratitude also frees you from comparison. When you focus on what's missing, life feels like a contest you're losing. But when you focus on what remains, you realize there is nothing to compete for. The Stoics taught that envy is blindness. It makes you overlook what you already have in the pursuit of what you don't. Marcus wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." The practice of gratitude sharpens that way of thinking until contentment becomes second nature. Try this simple reflection. Recall the things you once prayed for, worked for, or longed for, and realize that many of them are now part of your ordinary days. The roof over your head, the body that still moves, the people who stayed when others left. Gratitude is remembering that what feels normal today was once beyond reach. And when you see that clearly, life stops feeling insufficient. It begins to feel abundant. Even in solitude, gratitude changes the texture of your silence. What once felt like emptiness now feels like rest. You no longer crave constant affirmation because gratitude teaches sufficiency. The Stoics believed that wealth lies not in possession, but in perspective. Seneca wrote, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." When you live this way, your peace no longer depends on circumstance, it becomes self-sustaining. Of course, there will be days when gratitude feels out of reach, when life presses too hard and your thoughts grow heavy. On those days, remember, even breathing is an act of participation in life. Even pain proves aliveness. The Stoics didn't expect constant joy, they aimed for constancy of soul. To be grateful, even in hardship, is to remain sovereign over your inner state. You are not thanking the pain for existing, you are thanking yourself for enduring it with grace. Over time, this gratitude deepens into wisdom. You begin to understand that nothing is owed, yet everything can be appreciated. You expect less, observe more, and cherish simplicity. A quiet walk becomes enough. A conversation without pretense feels rare. The moments you once rushed through become the very moments that restore you. Gratitude doesn't change the world, it changes your relationship to it. And when you live this way, the energy around you shifts. People feel it. They sense your calm, your presence, your refusal to chase or complain. Gratitude radiates without words. It softens even those who don't understand it. It reminds them, without teaching, that peace is possible. So as you move forward, let gratitude be the ground beneath every step. Let it remind you that even the smallest fragments of your day, warmth, breath, thought, awareness, are miracles disguised as ordinary. You've walked through loss, through silence, through rebuilding. Now you stand in the light of what remains. And in that light, you see clearly that nothing essential was ever lost. This is where appreciation becomes strength, The one who is grateful for everything cannot be defeated by anything. From here, imagine standing in the middle of your life and realizing that what once satisfied you no longer fits. The things that once thrilled you, the people who once impressed you, even the victories that once defined you, they all feel smaller now. This is what happens when you begin to raise your standards. Growth quietly rewrites your sense of what is enough. It's not arrogance, it's evolution. The Stoics called it the refinement of virtue, the natural elevation of the soul that occurs when you start choosing substance over comfort, depth over distraction. At first, this shift feels strange. You find yourself saying no to things that used to excite you. You withdraw from circles that once felt like home. You speak less, observe more, and realize that silence now gives you more satisfaction than validation ever did. The change confuses people. They say you've become distant, when in truth, you've become discerning. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When your thoughts mature, the colors of your life begin to change. What once seemed bright now feels shallow. What once seemed dull now glows with meaning." I knew a man who went through this transformation without realizing it. For years, he surrounded himself with people who only celebrated ease. Every conversation was about success, money, indulgence. It all looked impressive from the outside, but over time, he began to feel empty after each gathering, like someone who had feasted but was still starving. One evening, as they all laughed about trivial things, he felt a quiet distance rise within him. He wasn't angry, he just knew he didn't belong there anymore. That night, he went home, deleted every superficial number from his phone, and wrote a simple line in his notebook. "I want my company to challenge me, not consume me." That single act was the start of his new life. The Stoics taught that when you raise your standards, you don't lose people, you reveal them. Those who truly belong will rise with you. Those who can't will drift away. Seneca reminded us, associate with those who will make you better. It sounds simple, but it requires courage. Because raising your standards means you must first outgrow your old self, the one who settled for less, who tolerated noise, who mistook familiarity for connection. You begin to notice the quiet ways the world tests your new boundaries. Someone jokes about your seriousness. Someone calls you too much. A friend complains that you've changed, but you no longer feel the need to defend your growth. You've learned that explanation is a form of seeking permission, and you no longer need permission to evolve. The Stoics called this state autarkies, self-sufficiency. It is not isolation, but stability within oneself. The more you cultivate it, the less approval becomes a currency you need. Raising your standards is not about superiority, it's about integrity. You start measuring everything, including yourself, by alignment instead of popularity. You ask, does this serve my peace? Does this align with my values? Does this strengthen my mind? And when the answer is no, you step away without hesitation. You no longer chase attention, you cultivate presence. You no longer fear solitude, you respect it. You no longer seek comfort, you seek clarity. There's a moment in this process when life feels emptier. You've cleared the noise but haven't yet filled the silence. This is the test Marcus Aurelius warned of when he wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." At first, that retreat feels too quiet. You'll doubt yourself, wondering if you've become cold or detached. But soon, you'll see the truth. Emptiness is not absence. It's space. Space for new people, new wisdom, new purpose. One day, without fanfare, you'll wake up and realize your habits have changed. You'll rise earlier, speak simpler, spend slower. You'll no longer argue about opinions or chase validation. You'll care deeply, but selectively, and in that restraint, you'll feel an unexpected kind of freedom. The freedom of no longer needing to explain why you require more from life. The Stoics believed that a person's worth is revealed by what they demand from themselves, not what they expect from others. When you raise your standards internally, everything external begins to rearrange. Opportunities change, relationships shift. Life becomes quieter but sharper, smaller but fuller. You stop living by reaction and start living by intention. I once asked an old teacher how he managed to stay so calm in a world addicted to noise. He smiled and said, "Because I no longer dine where the food of the soul is scarce." It took me years to understand that line. When your standards evolve, you stop feeding on gossip, comparison, and superficial praise. You hunger for truth, stillness, and genuine exchange. The world may offer you less of what it used to, but in return, it gives you more of what matters. Raising your standards is an act of silent rebellion against everything shallow. It's not a performance, it's a purification. You start living with such clarity that anything false simply falls away. People who once misunderstood your quiet will one day wish for it. Those who mocked your discipline will envy your peace. And you won't feel pride, you'll feel gratitude. Because you'll know it wasn't the world that changed. You did. So, keep walking this higher path, even when it feels lonely. Keep choosing quality over convenience, virtue over comfort, alignment over approval. Each choice is a step toward a life that feels light but grounded, simple but meaningful. And when you look back, you'll see that every time you demanded more from yourself, the universe met you halfway. This is how the Stoics defined greatness, not in wealth or status, but in refinement. The person who raises their standards raises their reality. They stop being shaped by circumstance and begin shaping it instead. And when you live this way, quietly, firmly, without apology, the world around you starts to adjust to your frequency. Because nothing is more magnetic than a person who has outgrown the need to impress anyone but their own conscience. From here, imagine a quiet moment when you begin to trust again, but this time with eyes wide open. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You no longer rush to believe every kind word or welcome every outstretched hand. Experience has taught you that not all smiles mean safety, not all promises mean truth. And yet, closing your heart completely would be to betray the lesson itself. This is the next step of wisdom, to relearn trust without losing clarity. The Stoics believed that trust, like strength, must be trained. It cannot be blind, it cannot be desperate, it must be chosen with intention. Epictetus once said, "It is better to stumble upon truth than to cling to illusion." To trust wisely, you must first know how to see, not through fear, but through discernment, because fear blinds just as easily as naivety. The challenge is not to stop believing in people, it's to stop expecting perfection from them. I remember a man who once told me that after betrayal, he decided never to let anyone close again. "I'm better off alone," he said, his voice steady but hollow. Years later, I met him again, and though time had healed the wound, something in him had turned to stone. He mistook distance for safety. The Stoics would call that an imbalance of reason, a man reacting to pain rather than learning from it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "When you wake up, remind yourself that you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, but none of them can harm you if you refuse to join them in their ways." The lesson isn't to retreat, but to meet the world with prepared understanding. When you learn to trust with awareness, you stop testing others and start observing them. You pay attention not to their words, but to the consistency of their actions. The Stoics taught that virtue recognizes virtue. A person of integrity senses alignment instinctively. It's not about suspicion, it's about seeing the truth of others without coloring it with your own hopes. When someone reveals who they are, you believe it calmly. No anger, no disappointment, just recognition. There was a woman I once knew who carried this wisdom effortlessly. She had been betrayed in love, but never became bitter. When asked how she managed, she said, "Because I trust myself first." That line stayed with me. Trust begins within. When your judgment is sound, your boundaries clear, and your intentions clean, you no longer fear deceit. You may still be lied to, but you won't be broken by it. The Stoic mind sees deception as another test of perception, a reminder to stay awake, not a reason to close the eyes. Trusting wisely means accepting imperfection. People will fail you. Sometimes not out of malice, but out of weakness or ignorance. When this happens, you respond with perspective, not punishment. Seneca wrote, "To be offended by others' faults is to forget how often we err ourselves." You stop expecting virtue to be universal and instead become the example of it. You hold no grudges, but you remember patterns. Forgiveness clears the heart. Memory guards it. There's a quiet strength in this balance. You can listen without absorbing, love without losing yourself, and forgive without reopening the wound. You understand now that not everyone is meant to stay. Some will teach you trust, others will teach you discernment. Both are necessary, both are valuable. The Stoics called this acceptance of nature, understanding that everything and everyone plays a role in your formation, even those who hurt you. Learning to trust again is also learning to read silence, the way someone speaks when they gain nothing from you, the way they behave when you are no longer useful. The Stoic eye observes, not to judge, but to understand. The goal is not to avoid betrayal, but to meet it with steadiness when it comes. When someone breaks your trust, they lose access, not your peace. That is mastery. That is control. Think of trust like a flame. When you were naive, you gave the whole fire to anyone who asked, and many burned you with it. After betrayal, you hid the flame, starving it of air until it dimmed. But true wisdom is learning to protect the flame without extinguishing it. You keep it steady, guarded by reason, fueled by understanding. You can still light another's path, but no one can take your warmth from you. In practice, this means you stop rushing. You let time reveal character. You learn that patience is the best form of discernment. People who are genuine will prove it without pressure. Those who aren't will reveal themselves through inconsistency. Marcus Aurelius said, "Time is a river of passing events. Let the river do the work. Watch, listen, stay calm. The truth always surfaces." And as this clarity deepens, you begin to trust life itself again. You understand that every loss of faith was a lesson in perspective. Every betrayal was training in resilience. The Stoics never feared deception because they saw it as part of human nature. To trust wisely is to accept imperfection without letting it harden you. It is to keep your heart open, but your eyes awake. So, if you find yourself afraid to trust again, start with this. Trust your capacity to endure. Trust your ability to see clearly. Trust that no matter what others do, your peace is yours to keep. This kind of trust can't be taken, only strengthened. And when you finally live this way, measured, calm, aware, you realize that trusting others is no longer a gamble. It's a reflection of your own steadiness. You no longer hand over your peace like a fragile gift. You share it, knowing it cannot be stolen. Because what is rooted in wisdom can bend, but it can never break. At this stage, imagine walking through a day that feels calm, not because nothing happens, but because nothing shakes you anymore. You've learned to set boundaries, to rebuild, to trust wisely, to hold gratitude. You've outgrown the noise, the dependency, the need to be understood. And now, what remains is something deeper than peace. It's purpose. The Stoics believed that once a person purifies their mind from external distraction, life demands a new kind of question. What am I here for? At first, this question feels heavy. You might look for grand answers, a career, a legacy, a mission. But purpose in the Stoic sense is not about magnitude, it's about alignment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do every act of your life as though it were your last." Purpose isn't found in distant goals, but in daily integrity. It's the quiet decision to do what's right, again and again, regardless of recognition. True meaning doesn't shout, it repeats. I once met an older craftsman who had spent 40 years repairing clocks. He lived alone, his shop tucked between two narrow streets. I asked him if he ever got tired of the repetition. He smiled and said, "Every clock I fix keeps someone else's world running on time. That's enough." His answer reminded me that purpose doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it's a man doing his work with precision and pride, unseen but essential. The Stoics called this duty, not in the sense of obligation, but as an act of harmony with the world. Purpose for them was not a search, but a practice. It emerges naturally when you live with virtue. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." You stop chasing meaning when you start living it. Every time you act with honesty in a dishonest world, you are living your purpose. Every time you choose restraint over impulse, patience over anger, clarity over chaos, you are serving something larger than yourself. But here's where most people stumble. They mistake purpose for perfection. They wait for certainty before they move. The Stoics rejected that paralysis. They believed in movement guided by reason, not hesitation fueled by doubt. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." You don't need to see the whole path, only the next right step. Action brings clarity. Waiting for perfect conditions only strengthens fear. There was once a young woman who felt lost after leaving a long relationship. She told me she didn't know who she was anymore. "Start anywhere," I said. "Learn, create, contribute, whatever calls to you now." She began volunteering at a local shelter just to fill her time. But over the months she discovered something she hadn't felt in years: quiet fulfillment. Not joy exactly, just steadiness. She told me later, "I didn't find purpose. I remembered it. That's how it works." Purpose isn't outside you. It's what remains when you stop pretending to be anyone else. The Stoic path is simple but exacting. Wake up, act with integrity, accept what comes. There is no need to announce your meaning. Your life reveals it through conduct. Marcus urged himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's the entire philosophy distilled to one command. You live your purpose by embodying your principles, especially when it's inconvenient. Purpose also refines your relationships. You stop asking, "Who makes me happy?" and start asking, "Who helps me grow?" The people who once entertained you may no longer fit the rhythm of your evolution. You begin to surround yourself with those who challenge you quietly, who remind you of your values by the way they live theirs. Seneca wrote that the wise man is self-sufficient but not antisocial. He finds companions for the journey, not distractions from it. And perhaps most importantly, purpose changes your relationship with time. You stop rushing. You stop fearing endings. When you live with intention, even the smallest moments feel whole. The Stoics viewed time as sacred currency. You spend it on what you control and accept the rest with calm. Every sunset, every conversation, every task becomes an opportunity to express virtue. You no longer chase longevity, you chase depth. Still, there will be days of doubt. Days when you question whether your path matters, whether your efforts are enough. On those days, remember the Stoic truth. Meaning is not measured by scale, but by sincerity. A quiet act done with virtue outweighs a loud act done for praise. Purpose is not a destination you reach, it's the direction you walk. Each step, each decision, each thought aligned with reason becomes a thread in the fabric of a meaningful life. And as you continue on this path, something profound occurs. The world still tests you, but no longer defines you. You start to see everything, pleasure, loss, success, failure, as material for growth. You realize that every experience has served the same end, the shaping of your soul. Marcus wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Purpose is not avoiding the obstacles, it's allowing them to carve you into wisdom. So now, after everything you've released, everything you've learned, everything you've built, the final lesson arrives quietly. Your life doesn't need to be extraordinary to be meaningful. It only needs to be deliberate. Every moment is an invitation to live by reason, by courage, by virtue. The Stoics knew that when a person aligns their will with nature, accepting what is, acting rightly, thinking clearly, they are already living their purpose. And when you finally reach that state, you no longer chase fulfillment. You become it. You carry it in how you speak, how you work, how you treat others. Purpose is no longer something you search for. It is the calm within you that no circumstance can steal. Because in the end, as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and a mind aligned with virtue is a life already complete. At this stage, imagine the world around you continuing its restless motion, people chasing recognition, clinging to grudges, drowning in noise, while you stand quietly apart, calm but not detached, present yet unshaken. You've learned to let go, to rebuild, to live with purpose. But now comes the most sacred lesson of all: transcendence. The art of rising above life's turbulence without abandoning your humanity. This is where Stoicism turns from philosophy into liberation. The Stoics believed that the highest freedom is not found in possessions or status, but in inner sovereignty, the ability to remain centered no matter what the world demands. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. To transcend is not to escape life, but to live in it with unshakable calm. It means walking through chaos without letting it stain your soul. Picture this: you're standing in a crowd where everyone is shouting, competing, proving, yet inside you there's silence. You no longer feel the need to win every argument, to correct every misunderstanding, to impress every observer. You have learned that peace is not passive, it's mastery. The same fire that once burned you now lights your path. You've turned reaction into reflection, pain into perspective, loss into wisdom. That is what it means to transcend. I once knew an old sailor who had spent decades at sea. His face was carved by storms, his hands rough with time. When asked if he feared the ocean, he smiled and said, "The sea only terrifies those who haven't learned to trust the waves." His answer carried the essence of Stoic transcendence, the understanding that life's storms are not your enemy, they are your teachers. You can't control the winds, but you can control your sail. The sailor who fights the sea drowns, the one who adapts survives. This acceptance is not resignation, it's clarity. Seneca taught that a wise person welcomes fate, not because they enjoy every outcome, but because they understand that resistance multiplies suffering. Transcendence begins when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "This, too, belongs to my path." You meet both fortune and misfortune with equal steadiness. You neither celebrate too loudly nor grieve too deeply. You simply move with grace. There's a story of a sculptor who spent years carving a statue from marble. One day the statue cracked. His apprentice panicked, calling it ruined, but the sculptor smiled and said, "The stone is teaching me where it wants to go." He reshaped the piece, following the break, until the flaw became part of the design. That's how Stoicism views life. Your cracks aren't mistakes, they're instructions. The universe chisels away what's unnecessary until only your essence remains. Transcendence is living with this understanding that every challenge refines you, every loss redirects you, every disappointment cleanses you of illusion. You stop trying to control outcomes and instead focus on mastery of response. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The world may still test you, but your reaction no longer defines you. You've become the calm in the middle of your own storm. To reach this state is to practice ataraxia, tranquil strength of the soul. It's not indifference, it's stability. You can care deeply without being consumed. You can feel pain without being ruled by it. You no longer swing between extremes of joy and despair. Your emotions flow, but they no longer drown you. You stand like rooted earth, moved, but never displaced. At this point, you realize that even control itself is an illusion. You stop forcing outcomes and start aligning with nature. Marcus wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs?" This doesn't mean blind surrender. It means faith in reason, in order, in the rhythm of life that continues regardless of your will. You begin to trust the unfolding. You stop chasing what isn't meant for you and cultivate what already belongs to you, your mind, your actions, your integrity. As this wisdom deepens, your presence changes. People notice it before you speak. There's a steadiness in your movements, a calm in your tone. You no longer chase validation because you understand the source of your worth. You no longer seek eyes to witness your worth. It is evident in your stillness. The Stoics call this the harmony between logos, the rational order of the universe, and your own reason. When they align, you become part of something larger, and peace ceases to be personal, it becomes universal. And yet transcendence is not a final escape. It's the beginning of a new responsibility to live as an example of what calm strength looks like in an unsteady world. You don't preach it, you embody it. Your silence teaches more than your words. Your composure inspires without demand. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet lived as a servant of wisdom, writing to himself, not the crowd. That is true greatness, to hold power yet remain humble, to experience pain yet remain kind. When you live this way, your relationship with the world transforms. You no longer see enemies, only mirrors. Every conflict becomes a lesson in restraint, every insult an exercise in patience, every setback a chance to practice perspective. You stop fighting life and begin flowing through it like water, flexible, persistent, unstoppable. In the end, this is what the Stoics were pointing toward all along, not detachment from life, but mastery within it. The point was never to escape emotion, but to refine it, never to reject the world, but to navigate it with grace. You are no longer a prisoner of circumstance. You are a participant in destiny. And so, as the noise of the world continues, you remain still. You move slowly, speak calmly, act deliberately. You are no longer driven by fear or desire, but by understanding. Life no longer feels like a battle to win. It feels like a path to walk. You have become what the Stoics called a citizen of the universe, at peace, not because life is easy, but because your soul is steady. This is where the journey ends and begins at once. For the one who has mastered himself no longer needs control over anything else. He walks quietly through the world, untouched by praise, undisturbed by blame, carrying within him a calm that no storm can shake. For the Stoic, peace is not escape from struggle, but mastery within it, the still flame that survives every storm. Each ending marks a beginning. When you choose peace over chaos and clarity over attachment, you're already walking the Stoic path. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to subscribe and stay connected to more reflections like this. Your presence here matters. Share your thoughts below or simply comment "calm within" to show that you've completed this journey. Keep choosing peace. Keep growing, and remember that letting go is not losing, it's making space for what's true.